Um, you can add sandstone slip.
These three are mine. This one's his.
Keams Canyon. There's Ribey.
On the res, there was a small tribey where you can't have booze to imbibe. Where things happen slow, and just so you know, they're living the life of O'Reilly.
The thing that was interesting about this is the whole dance was centered around rain. And so one thing that Barbara saw as well is you all saw they had a blue armband on their arms. Remember seeing that?
Or something, but they would stomp their feet, their right leg, and then these tortoise shells would rattle, making this sound. Yeah, just and all together in one beat. And then on their left leg, they were wearing bells around their calves.
He said that they were basically giving thanks in advance for the rain that was going to come and nourish their crops and feed them, and they were blessing the whole earth.
Stomping their feet with the beat. I noticed men next to me singing along with the men down in the dance.
There was a young man who was on the first date with this girl, and he wanted to impress her, so he took her to a nice restaurant, and he lit up a cigarette and asked her if she wanted one. She says, "Why, no. What would my Sunday school say? My Sunday school class." And he said, "Oh, okay." And then he ordered a drink and asked her if she wanted a drink. She says, "Well, no. What would my Sunday school class say?" I said, "Okay, fine." So then they were done at the restaurant, and he was driving her home, and he driving by this little motel that had kind of a bad reputation, and thought, well, what can I lose? And so he says, "You want to stop over here?" And she says, "Well, why, sure." He says, "Really? What would your Sunday school class say?" And she said, "Well, the same thing they always say. You don't have to smoke or drink to have a good time."
Through cupped hands round the tin can, I pretend to hold you to my breast and find that you're waiting from the back roads by the rivers of my memories, ever smiling, ever gentle on my mind.
Put by the Daughters of Utah Pioneers has an apostrophe in it. I think that's appropriate because Lee was his name, and it was his possession was Lee's Ferry, so it should have an apostrophe.
Old Lee, ran a prosperous ferry, loaded up with all they could carry. He charged lots of dough before he would go across the river that sometimes was scary.
St. George Mormons in 1874 built what we now call Lee's Ferry Fort, which still stands. Actually, it was not built to be a fort, but rather as a trading post, where Mormons could trade and sell to Indians, primarily Navajos, and thereby keep Navajos from venturing farther into Utah and causing trouble. A new road was carved into the cliff overlooking the river, thus bypassing the terribly rough Lee's backbone that had been used since 1871. The new road was steep, narrow, and with tight curves, death-defying and treacherous, but it was better than the old road. He heard that at Lee's Ferry gold also existed in the purple cliffs of Shenli Shale, a formation so soft that it could be removed with a high-pressure hose. So Spencer moved operations to the foot of Glen Canyon to Lee's Ferry, where the Shenli Shale lay a short distance from the river. Lee's Ferry Fort, originally built by Mormons in 1874, was converted into a mess hall by adding an addition on the west end. Rather than admit defeat to distant investors or to return any money, they rationalized that driftwood was insufficient as fuel for the boilers. What they needed was coal, it was said, and coal could be found in the higher reaches of Warm Creek, a tributary of Glen Canyon about 25 miles upstream from Lee's Ferry. The steamboat, a 92-foot-long craft, was purchased in San Francisco, taken apart, and the pieces shipped by rail to Marysville, Utah. From there they were slowly taken overland to the mouth of Warm Creek. There the steamboat, to be named the Charles H. Spencer, was put together, loaded with a little coal, and floated 25 miles down to Lee's Ferry. The steamboat was photographed for its majestic premiere in 1912, with some of Spencer's workmen posing as crewmen on board. But the coal wasn't really needed, for no one could figure out how to capture the flecks of gold from the Shenli. Actually, Spencer had systematically fleeced his investors. By 1914, the steamboat lay partly on the bank, a slowly disintegrating hulk. Local residents and nearby ranchers stripped the wood from the superstructure, so that by the 1970s only the hull, the boiler, and the axle of the paddle wheel remained. Today, only a few metal parts are visible, most prominently the rusty boiler. The farm or ranch, which Emma liked to call Lonely Dell, was what made life at Lee's Ferry possible, for a family could, with a lot of hard work, make a living there. Certainly the ferry charges, which were few, could not provide a living.
Very, very narrow slot canyons, and there were a few pools of water that you had to go through at some point where it got real deep, and at one point I remember being submerged up to my neck. And that water was so cold I could not help but scream when I entered it. And we were doing this in October, so it was still hot, it was warm, and I after studying Lee's life for several years, I've never found much to respect about him, but I did gain respect for his grit.
Then came Leo and Hazel Weaver, who felt that Lee's Ferry would make an ideal site for a dude ranch. Using river boulders, they constructed what they called the Paradise Canyon Lodge, the most conspicuous structure at the ranch today. But it was Depression times, so they got few patrons.
The Lees settled at Lonely Dell, where it could get as hot as hell. So out of the way where they came to stay and left quite a story to tell. By the last day, some were quite dopey and feeling a little bit mopey. Will we want to come back? and bring our backpacks, all I can say is I sure Hopi.
This ain't no shit.